for leaders around the world to connect and discuss on different topics, share opinions and tips, raise awareness and on issues and challenges that many young women face, especially as the world is navigating with the current global pandemic. This panel is in collaboration with our friends and colleagues from the World Council of Churches. And today we will be hearing more from the context and life experience of our amazing panelists joining us today from Japan, from Zambia, Brazil, and of course, from our moderator from the Philippines. We're gonna also have a very special participation from a young women leader in Cuba, who will be also sharing her reflection on today's theme, which is creating resilient communities through faith and spirituality. The YWCA movement has traveled through history, interweaving components of faith, spirituality, and humanity deep in the heart of communities across the globe. COVID-19 has served to remind us of how important it is to have a balance between mind, body, and spirit. And today's panel and theme come in a very special time for YWCAs around the world, as just last week we were celebrating with World YMCA our annual week of prayer. So before we start, allow me to share with you a few housekeeping announcements for you to consider as we carry out with the panel. First of all, kindly note that this panel is meant to be for an hour and it will be conducted in English. We have enabled the chat box for participants to share their greetings or from which part of the world are they connecting from. Also, if you're experiencing any issues or technical difficulty, please feel free to use the chat and to let us know, and at the World YWCA, we will try our best to assist you. We specifically request you to please use the chat box for greetings and for request of assistance only, because there is a separate feature for questions and answers, which if time allows, we hope that we will be able to have some questions and answers coming from the floor. Last but not least, this panel is being recorded and it is also being transmitted through World YWCA Facebook page. So before I introduce the panel today, I would like to give you the floor to World YWCA General Secretary Casey Hardin, who has a very special message to share with us today. Casey, over to you.
Thank you, Danny, and thanks for putting together this fantastic panel. We do a lot of panels, and we're very thoughtful and strategic about them. And this one has a special resonance as we talk about the nexus between faith and leadership. I want to thank Evelyn, Satoko, Larissa, and Joy for sharing your wisdom with us today. And I can't wait to have you all speaking instead of Danny or I. I have the privilege of sharing a blessing to set some context and create an environment for the panel today. It's from the World YWCA and World YMCA Week of Prayer booklet, which is available online, and we can put it in the chat box. For this year, the theme was Rays of Hope, creating resilient communities through practical spirituality. A very relevant topic for, especially for a year where collectively around the world, there's a common threat and common trauma, common worry that where practical spirituality can be super helpful in navigating collectively as well. So I'll begin the blessing. Breathe in this blessing. Consider how you might influence just one life. As you breathe out, speak a blessing on those all around you. God bless our world, our habitat. Enable us to respect and treat our earth with the dignity it deserves. Empower us to preserve its resources to provide for all people. Enable us to protect our people, especially the vulnerable, women and children. Enable us to do what is good, resist evil, and to protect each other from evil. Enable our men to transform themselves from beneficiaries of patriarchy to contributors of human dignity. Inspire our leaders to be transformed for the good of all people. Enable us to be transformed into servant leaders. And enable us to be open to restore your image in us. Inspire us to have healing relationships. Enable us to live with dignity. And empower us to heal our communities and give us your peace. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Those were very powerful words, and considering that despite the struggles of the pandemic, it's been really great, to see young women leaders in many different communities around the world, that they have come out not just to raise awareness of the impacts of the pandemic, but they have also showcased their leadership to support and strengthen communities in distress. So I think that was a really nice way to start today's event. I just want to say also thank you to our sisters from India, Nepal, Palestine, Thailand, Bolivia, in Geneva and Malaysia, who have sent their greetings. We're really happy that you can join us today. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator for today, Joy Eva Bohol. Joy Eva's name is short for Joyful Evangelist. She's from Cebu City in the Philippines, and she's serving as a global missionary of the United Methodist Church. Her leadership and passion working with young people has enabled her to serve in different countries, including Colombia, the United States, and Korea, where she worked closely on the theme of gender justice. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Mass Communication, major in journalism from the University of the Philippines, and is currently working as program executive for the youth engagement at the World Council of Churches here in Geneva. It's really, really great to have you, Joy, with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Thank you also, Casey Hardin, for those encouraging words of welcome and also the blessings that you have shared with us. Thank you to the organizers of today's webinar, aiming to highlight the voices of young women from the ground to this global platform. It is truly an honor for me to moderate this virtual panel as a continued collaboration between the worldwide WCA and the World Council of Churches in addressing issues that matter most to young women around the world. Indeed, we are not just leaders of tomorrow, we are leaders now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us at this moment from different time zones around the globe. What a joy to share this space with you as we listen to stories of resilience, transformation, and hope in this current COVID-19 pandemic. Later in our conversation, our panelists will invite us to a common call to action in response to today's reality. Today's panelists are from different parts of the world. We have Evelyn from Zambia, Satoko from Japan, and Larissa from Brazil. We will also listen to a reflection on the theme by Dianette from Cuba. Allow me to introduce these young women formally. Evelyn Chirwa is from Lusaka, Zambia. She currently works as the Gender and Health Program Officer of Zambia Council of Churches. She is responsible for coordinating and crafting strategies addressing gender and health issues affecting young people and women. She has been leading on HIV and AIDS programs and programs against gender-based violence within the church and communities. Additionally, she has been engaged on platforms such as the All Africa Conference of Churches to share her community-based advocacy strategies and how youth in the church can be actively involved. Evelyn holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Zambia and is passionate about change and an inclusive, just world, which she believes can only begin with young people realizing and using our potential to the fullest. Welcome, Evelyn. Satoko Yamaguchi is a member of the United Nations Women Beijing Plus 25 Youth Task Force. She's also a program coordinator of YWCA of Japan, where she organizes various programs and campaigns to empower young women and girls in Japan. She coordinates a program called Japan-Korea Youth Conference that aims to raise awareness among youth from both countries on commonly shared issues, including gender equality issues. She also gives lectures on social and gender issues at junior and senior high schools, as well as universities in Japan. Welcome, Satoko. We have Larissa Aguiar Garcia, who is a member of the ECHOS Commission on Youth of the World Council of Churches. She serves as part of the commission to give voice to the young people in the ecumenical movement. Larissa is also an ambassador for the hashtag Thursdays in Black campaign, having helped translate the material to Portuguese in her church, the Methodist Church in Brazil. She also holds a bachelor in literature and linguistics and teaches English as second language and at a kindergarten, hoping to make a change in children's lives through education. Wow, we have a powerhouse this morning or this afternoon or this evening, in whichever context you're in, to listen to these different stories. So as we start, we invite our three panelists to share about their perspectives and their experiences of where they see faith and spirituality play in times of uncertainty and upheaval. You're very welcome, our panelists, to give your responses.
Okay, I think I'll begin. Thank you. Thank you very much, YWCA and WCC, for this amazing opportunity. Yeah, and to begin with, I would say that addressing challenges such as COVID-19 pandemic requires collaboration, across all sectors. We like it or not, COVID-19 has changed how the world operates, and different parts of the world were hit differently. Even coming out of such time requires, aspects of faith and spirituality to be in play. So I'll say that faith and spirituality is key in, such times of upheaval, because it gives people calmness and hope to look beyond, their current situation. Yeah, so, they change from the time that we're young, they change teaches us certain values that become a part of us. Values such as patience, values such as, love, hope, and togetherness. These are the values that are deeply rooted in faith that cannot be justified by, merely an intellectual process. Yeah, so this faith, is however sustained through belief systems such as religious institutions, which offer a string of values that provide, moral and ethical basis for long-term commitments and actions in support of addressing challenges such as the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it's been very challenging in Zambia because, when most people face such challenges, they usually run to the church for consolation, for comfort, for encouragement. But with the coming of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we had, things like social distancing, the closure of churches, and around here made it, made the most common displays of faith even more difficult. So despite all this, I just realized, how fundamental human connections are in expressing people's faith. And I can say that despite all these COVID-19 challenges, people's faith even grew stronger in this COVID-19, pandemic. The compliance to health guidelines by the faith bodies was amazing, clearly showing the value of togetherness. The embracing of technology, to still praise and worship God was even, a beautiful sight to see, to witness. So all this just reminded me, of the quality of tragic optimism, which is a cultivating factor of faith, the ability to maintain hope and meaning, find meaning in life despite the pain and despite the loss, despite the suffering. Yeah, so faith indeed enables people to grow through adversity, because in these times, people of faith will mostly spend their time trying to get sense of what happened and how it changed them. And these are the people that mostly even come out to be so resilient. So faith and spirituality are indeed key in times of adversity like this, and they should be embraced. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evelyn, for saying that and also reflecting on how values of our Christian faith, rooted in faith, really enables us to go through the adversity. Thank you. And Satoko, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Joy, for moderation. And also thank you very much to the Worldwide WCA and also WCC for this panel discussion. It's my absolute pleasure to be here today. Let me speak from my very personal experience, perspective based on experiences. This pandemic has disproportionately affected me personally, not as members of any organization, but as an individual, as you all have been. Talking about personally what I have gone through, from last April, all the staff members of YWC of Japan were shifted to remote work. And since then, I've continued my work from home, where I live with my parents and sister. During that time, my relationship with my family members went very, very, very bad. And my house turned not to be not a safe space to me at all. I was spending literally 24 hours in this very tiny room. And from that difficulty, I needed to escape and I needed to take a shelter at somewhere else temporarily. When I was staying at my room all day long, I was not able to feel any sense of connection with others outside. And that physical distancing, the physical isolation led me to the social isolation, where I have experienced the greatest level of mental health breakdown ever before in my entire life, to the degree where I was not able to eat and sleep properly anymore. But looking around myself, it was not only me, but other young women whom I have actually worked with as a part of the work at the YWC of Japan were and still are. Here in Japan, the number of people who committed suicide during this pandemic has dramatically increased. Japan has been known as the country, one of the top countries when it comes to the suicidal rate, even before this pandemic started. But particularly during this pandemic, the number really skyrocketed. Among those, young women and girls under 30 years old are the dominant sectors. And even in last month, October only, it was 74% of increase compared to the last year. Actually, young women are dying in silence. In the deep depression and isolation, what I personally disproportionately wanted with someone or something still being there, not giving up, still loving and caring us, helping us hold a faith and believing that there is a hope, there is good thing coming. And that's a role faith can play, which I and fellow sisters eagerly need and feel hungry for, giving us a sense of hope and assuring that we are not all alone in this struggle. Thank you, Joy, and that's all about from my side.
Thank you so much, Satoko, for sharing your vulnerability and also for being honest about your experience. You know, it's not just because we work in this organization or in this capacity that we are superheroes necessarily, but we are also human beings. And thank you. And you know, like being able to empathize and to experience similar situation with the people that you work with is such a powerful testimony. So thank you for being vulnerable and for allowing this space to be to listen to your honesty in this time of COVID. So thank you for that. And now we will listen also from Larissa and her experience during this time. Larissa?
I'm sorry. First, thank you, World YMCA for the YWCA. I'm sorry for this opportunity. and to be here as a panelist. And thank you, everybody. Um, I'm moved by Satoko's answer, so that's why my voice is a little bit wavery. But for me, faith and spirituality are strength in these moments that we've been living. I'm also going to answer by my very personal perspective, especially as a teacher. I was used to be in the classroom and with my students, and COVID-19 changed that and moved me back inside my bedroom, where I'm also living most of my days. And fortunately, my parents were very supportive with my work from the beginning, but at the same time, it's really hard to connect with children from a screen. And faith had led me to pray before each class, so I could be sure that with God with me and looking over the classes and not even like what would be taught in that day, but that the children would understand that even though they were at home, they still had friends and things to look forward to. And it's been really interesting to see how people think that children would not understand what we were going through. But my students, they range from 3 years old to 11 years old. And they were the most empathic and understanding people that I've been with virtually in the last 9 to 10 months. And I think that that's a strength that comes with their innocence, but also that is a proof that God has been with us all this time along as well. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Larissa. And we also understand it's 6 a.m. in Brazil right now. So thank you for waking up early and also for committing yourself to be in this conversation. And yes, thank you for, I think this is the beauty of this conversation. We're all from different parts of the world, and we that's the timer. And we still have some similar stories that we could connect. And look, the three of you said it beautifully, that still we are all struggling individually, but we also see hope, and that's what we are holding on to, this resilience that we are a part of. And you're so amazing, the three of you. I'm really honored to be in the space with you all, and we're just in the first question, so I'm looking forward to, as we address other issues of your experience, and also your perspectives in the different contexts that you are in right now. So thank you, all the three of you. As we move on, we're gonna ask the next question that we have here. So from your own personal stories that you have shared already, how does this, in your experience, how does this faith and spirituality influence your activism? From your own experience, so the three of you have already mentioned it as well, that based on this individual stories that you have, you're able to see others, and you're able to empathize with others struggling in the similar way. So could you tell us more of how this formed or informed your relationship and your work with the community where you're in or the organizations where you're in. So we'll start with, can we start with Satoko?
Yes, sure. To this question, I may not be able to answer in a way that you would expect, because I am afraid to say that, but I do not have a faith in a systematic religion. If I would say my faith is on sisterhood, being united with sisters in all diversity and intersectionalities, and resist against injustice in solidarity. The power of sisterhood is what I believe in. In the time of darkness, the first thing that saved me out of it and empowered me to move forward was a feminist network that I am part of. YYWC movement is one of them. Observing the feminist activists from all over the world quickly mobilizing themselves and from the very early stage and sharing how they have been going through and what the government responses were so far. And they have even come up to create the feminist demand and response. That was really inspiring and empowering to me. And from that sisterhood and activism, I was super empowered and started creating online safe space, learning how to from YYWCA safe space model for young women and girls here in Japan to share their feelings and concerns and to support each other. In this attempt of making online safe space, I got to know how each one of these young women have been going through. One participant was also experiencing a hardship at home like me and shared that her home was not safe space at all. Please kindly remember her in your prayers and thoughts. I really wanted her to be here today, but she was not able to make it. I invited her to launch the radio show as I anyway wanted to encourage her, and I knew that she is a very talented person. She got excited, and immediately we launched a radio show so-called YY Radio Show. What was amazing about her was that she wanted it not just for herself to escape from the reality, which is obviously buried, but she was aware that there are many more young women like her in the great suffering. So she wanted to create safe space for others to participate by listening and make others feel hopeful. This experience strengthened my faith on sisterhood for supporting each other and creating change. Thank you.
Thank you, Satoko, for for that very, very critical sharing that you also shared, through a case study of somebody and how this has informed to do the person or your organization, your group of young women to do something about it. And I think what you're saying about the faith in sisterhood, it's a very prophetic, well, in the Christian perspective of how we really see, and sometimes we don't see it that way. So thank you for giving us that perspective, and definitely I'm going to use that more often. Thank you so much for sharing the story of these young women and the show that they're leading into. Probably you could share it to us as well to connect with our networks. So let me also call Lisa.
To answer this question, I'm gonna shift a little bit the perspective to tell you about a little bit how things are in Brazil, because we have been struggling with politics in Brazil since the election of our president in 2018. And we have a growing conservative force that it's deeply rooted in the archaic ways of the patriarchy. And we've been struggling a lot with the idea that women should be at home, dependent of their husbands, and subjugated to a freedomless life in a way. And this president and his political views are being supported by religion. I'm not gonna say faith, because I don't think that comes from an actual spirituality. It's more of a way to maneuver with the poor and other people that cling to faith in order to think that things will be better. And this also makes me angry at that idea that faith is being used as a way to make people fall into a life they are not comfortable with and are not being represented actually. But at the same time, I understand that the people that voted and the people that thought that because he said he was from a religion, he would be actually following the words from the Bible and the Christian teachings, leads me to be more empathetic, especially to the women that fall in this category of people that were misled, and to try and teach them how feminism actually works, because it's been demonized and said that it was against Christianity, which is obviously not true. And this along with my spirituality and absolute knowledge that God would not like us to suffer that way. That was my timer. I'm sorry. So to wrap it up, I think that having this back knowledge that people are not knowledgeable about how we can move forwards in a just environment for genders and against violence, we have to teach them. And that's, yeah, I'm sorry. That's it, sorry.
No, thank you. It's really good that we all feel this, that we are in a space that we're comfortable and that we can share it to one another. Thank you for the trust, especially to our panelists as well, for trusting that those who are listening will not just pass it from one ear to the next, but we're really doing something about this. And I think it's correct, you know, when faith is used to justify oppressive systems, patriarchal systems, and we know that even churches where it's very patriarchal, but we're still challenging it. And I think it's good to always raise that up and to highlight that, and how governments romanticize resiliency. I know this because in the Philippines, always we had a typhoon just now, and always they said that Filipino people are resilient, but the root cause of the problem is really the structure and the systems, and romanticizing it in many countries. It's really something that we have to address and to stop. So thank you for lifting this issue up, and continue to be in conversation in this as well. So education is really a key, and what you're doing through education with the kids is very important as we educate young and children towards a better society, a sustainable society that we want to thrive and to see happen. Yes, Evelyn, please jump in.
Thank you very much, Joy. So I'll answer this question from my own experiences. Yeah. So I'll say that I've always seen my engagements as my extension of my faith. Yeah, however, this period was a little challenging for me. It was a very challenging period because, I faced the rejection, I faced the stigma, the isolation that comes with being infected with the COVID-19 disease. I felt alone, and that was slowly taking away my energy, even in line with my work. But in such times, I still drew my strength, from my faith. I would begin my day, and the strongest begin my day with prayer, and the prayer would give me the courage to take up any activity during the day. And I would also give another experience that I had where I had experienced some anxiety. Yeah, so the time that I was taking up this role at the National Council of Churches, I received comments like, you're too young to deal with gender issues, especially those affecting the church. You will not manage to work with faith leaders at your age. You won't manage to do this, you won't manage to do that. But because of the belief that I've always had in God, that He put me in this position for a purpose, I immediately regained my courage, and I can confidently say that I've really worked well with the men and women of faith, that are way older than I am, in finding solutions to most of the existing challenges in our member churches, especially this period of the COVID-19. Yeah. So also that my belief, my faith, my spirituality has also instilled in me the desire to reach out to more people in this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Zambia and many other parts of the world have had a spiked increase in the number of gender-based violence cases due to isolation, which has put, people are confined 24/7 to their homes, which actually put women and girls at the risk of gender-based violence. So during this time, I sat, and then I also noticed how, the youth space in the church has been very underused, it's been underutilized. And yeah, and it can be a very key tool in advocating against gender-based violence. So recently, we trained 30 young people from different churches that were trained as trainers of trainers, and will further implement certain activities like training their fellow youths in the church to advocate against gender-based violence. They'll form support groups for victims of gender-based violence, and also use the church platform, use the youth space in the church to raise awareness on GBV issues and many other interventions that we came up with. So I believe that that these young people of faith will use their various spiritual values that have been instilled in them by the church, apart from the knowledge that they might have gotten from the training. So they use these values in order to implement these activities addressing gender-based violence. I also can say that I believe that I've been able to do all that I can because of my relationship with God, which has been manifested through my faith and my spirituality. For me, faith is a driving force, the most powerful weapon, that has affected my thinking, that has affected how I live my life, and has in turn affected my line of work and my activism. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evelyn, also for sharing the work that you're continually doing, especially, facing this, living this challenge of being undermined because as you're a young person and as a young woman, and I could resonate with that, being the youngest program executive in the WCC and a colored woman also. It is indeed challenging. You have to do more things, more than 100% than the rest because of this kind of structure and mentality that we have to deal in. But it's really good. Thank you for sharing that you're using the platform of the church as a way to train young people to raise awareness and intervention on sexual and gender-based violence through that platform. And I think the three of you has mentioned also on the mental health, addressing mental health really seriously and intentionally during this time. And yeah, continue to do that. And thank you so much for sharing this and sharing your resiliency in spite of all this stigma, as you mentioned, and criticism in your workplace or even in the church. So we need to address this, and we have people here joining us from different parts of the world, different churches or even organizations that we could resonate with that. And we hope that as the sisterhood, as mentioned as well, that as a community of sisters around the world, we support and continue to be activists in this in the different platforms to address these issues. So thank you. So we've heard our panelists. We still have some time to hear them. So as they prepare to respond for the last question in this webinar, I invite us to listen to a video recording from Dianette Valdez. She is the chairperson of the Student Christian Movement in Cuba. And through that capacity, she represents the World Student Christian Federation to the World Council of Churches, ECHO's Commission on Youth. So here is Dianette in her recorded reflection.
Hello everyone, my name is Dianette from Cuba, and I am glad that even when I cannot join this virtual panel online because of the difficulties of internet service in Cuba, I still can share my experience through this video with you. I'm especially grateful to the World YWCA and to the WCC for this opportunity that has been extended to me, and also for amplifying the voices of young women from all over the world. We cannot speak for others, but I believe our stories carry so much of the communities and societies that we are part of. Moving into the topic that we have been called to reflect today, I first of all would like to say that faith and spirituality cannot be experienced and shared out of the context in which we live. Speaking about the Cuban context in such a short time is very challenging for me, but I would like to mention at least 3 elements that I consider essential to understand how the pandemic has impacted Cubans in a particular way. Number 1, the economic crisis, which is something that we were experiencing before the pandemic, but has worsened during the pandemic. It is not the result of unemployment, low salaries, and social gaps, but also Cubans face an economic and political blockade from the US for more than 60 years already, and the administration of President Donald Trump has not made things easier for Cubans. We are facing right now a great shortage and lack of first need products such as medicine, hygiene items, food, and it becomes harder to overcome also because of the closing of the frontiers for tourism, which has been historically an alternative source of income for Cubans. Number 2, I would like to mention the growing of fundamentalisms, in particular the religious fundamentalism. It represents a risk for the social achievements that the Cuban Revolution has already attained. The fundamentalist groups are addressing issues that are particularly sensible for young people, mainly those related to gender issues. During the pandemic, social media has become a suitable platform for it, where people assume that freedom of expression and democracy means saying whatever they want, to the point of ignoring and denying the right of abundant life of others. The other side of the coin with the fundamentalist groups is that they often come not only with an ethical and moral agenda, but with a political one in a time where Cuba has been also implementing and changing the laws that support the new constitution that was approved last year, including the new family code. And number 3, I would like to mention the practice and globalization of solidarity and care. In times where people are more and more concerned about their individual interests and shortage of medicine and food is a day-to-day reality, there is, however, in Cuba a political will to provide basic food and health care for all the citizens who need it, especially those at risk or those who are sick with COVID. The Cuban government is also sending doctors to many countries in the world to help with the pandemic. And this is a narrative that changes the logic of the market and the world politics, and I think it is important and it's very needed to highlight today. So, now having said this about the context, I would like to briefly share how faith and spirituality have influenced churches and ecumenical organizations to respond to the COVID emergencies. with critical eyes, first of all, and prophetic voices to analyze and to question the reality, to recognize who is suffering the most and why, to express disconformity against established order and structures when they do not serve the people, but also assuming individual and collective responsibilities, being proactive, propositive, and creative in times of difficulties. Also, I think networking and alliances is very important, both within Cuba, but also with the international partners that have been joining us in advocacy and solidarity work. Within Cuba, as young people from the Student Christian Movement of Cuba, we have been, for example, working very close together with churches, providing food to seniors who live alone, assisting individuals at risk when have been threatened, for example, by meteorological phenomenon, sharing medicine, creating liturgical resources that have been shared in the social networks, delivering purified waters for people in the community, creating and sharing social media content with an alternative speech of inclusion, love with justice, different to that speech of hate, division, intolerance that is being promoted by the fundamentalist groups that I mentioned before. And last but not least, I would like to emphasize on the importance of nurturing hope in the middle of despair through a committed discipleship, trusting God with humility. Human beings have believed that we are God. We have been reminded now how vulnerable we are and how much we need from one another and from the whole of creation. In this time of isolation and lockdown, in which we have had to look inside ourselves more, we have also learned to see the church beyond the physical building. I hope that these reflections continue enlightening one another and helping us learning together. I'm looking forward to hear more on how, in your experience as young women leaders, has faith and spirituality supported communities to become resilient and to nurture hope during times of crisis like the COVID pandemic. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that reflection, Janet. Janet couldn't join us in person, as she explained, but and it's also too early in Cuba, but hopefully later on she would wish to watch this entire panel webinar as well in her time. So thank you, Janet, for that reflection and for emphasizing that church indeed is beyond the church building. And communities, we are working in communities and we are in solidarity with one another. So just repeating Danette asking the question to our panelists for this webinar. She asked that as young women leaders in your different communities and contexts, how do you see faith and spirituality used to nurture hope and resilience in communities, especially when responding to the pandemic? I'll repeat it again. She asked, how can we use our faith and spirituality to nurture hope and resilience in communities, especially when responding to the pandemic, moving from individual experience to a collective one? Larissa, would you like to jump in?
Yes. For this question, I've been thinking about my own church. During the pandemics, I saw a lot of people losing their jobs and having trouble with finding and being able to provide for their family, like food and clothing. And the churches have been moving and organizing themselves to provide food, clothing, and other things for these families. And especially because we didn't have that much help from the governments on federal and state levels. So to see the churches being this generous, and the churches not as the institution, but as people that came and to the church and say, hi, I have this amount of food or this amount of money that I can give and to help other people. Especially we've been helping a lot of families that are from young pastors that didn't have like time or a place to go back to when they had to stop their studies because of the pandemics. And this strength in the faith and this generosity, it's what I think it's the most beautiful way to show resilience in this moment where we could have been looking only individually and thinking, I need these, I'm not feeling well, and to see like, okay, I'm not feeling well, but so is this other family and I can help, so I should. And that's what I think it's beautiful, even though it would be better if we had help from the government or the institutions that failed us in this time. So I think that's my ending note, that we in this moment try to be generous with our feelings, with our empathy, as well as with any means that we could have to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larissa. I'm gonna call Evelyn.
Okay, thank you so very much. This question, I found it a little bit hard. Yeah, but I can say that faith is a manifestation of love, and all the other fruits of the Spirit that has been mentioned in Galatians 5:22, which is love, joy, patience, faithfulness, goodness, and humility. And real spirituality in whichever context should be led and defined by these fruits of the Spirit in times of trouble like the COVID-19. Because of love for one another, people will work together, people will find a solution. Because of these qualities, I was actually impressed by how faith bodies, here in Zambia, like ZCP, the Council of Churches in Zambia, how they all came together to reach the vulnerable people, to give messages of hope, to raise awareness and to prepare people for resilience. I can say that we can, however, shift from individualistic perspective to collective approaches by embracing that which holds us, as humanity together. Yeah. By embracing the common good, by not being so selfish, just like Larissa pointed out, not to think of, not to think of another person's need, especially in this time of the pandemic. Yeah, so this can also be shown, by working together, like the Israelites did. If you go to Exodus 14, the biggest challenge that they had was the time that they had to cross the Red Sea. So the Red Sea at that point was a challenge. And if you read the whole passage, the terms that have been referred to are they, there, and those are collective terms. In as much as Moses was leading them, it shows that they were working together, and that's the only time that Moses would be able to part the sea. So we can emulate them by working together in such kind of times. We can also, shift from individualistic perspectives to the collective approach by giving and combating fear with accurate information. Yeah, like especially around here, I came across some people saying that, I cannot follow COVID-19 guidelines because of the faith that I have in God. I'm a child of God and I cannot get sick, whilst others refuse to believe that COVID-19 was real. And I think this is because these perspectives were because of the information that they received and how the whole COVID, situation was dealt with, impacting on people's faiths and beliefs differently. Yeah, so if we shift from, if we give accurate information, that is going to combat fear instead of instilling fear in people. I think that's also a collective approach of dealing with with the pandemic in such times. And we also need to stand, for one another. We need to give each other encouragement, especially to those, that have their faith bearing down, so that they may be strengthened in such times. And also, lastly, I can say that working for the National Council of Churches around here has shown me how different faith bodies, collectively respond to challenges. And because of the extent of the work done is, it's marvelous. But again, it becomes challenging because it becomes challenging to adopt collective approaches because of different levels of faith and spirituality that comes with, the different value system. Yeah, but at the end of the day, all sectors, individuals, organizations, even government bodies, all have a role to play in ensuring that collective approaches to dealing with challenges like the COVID-19 are found. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. And Satoko?
Thank you so much, Joy. Maybe we can say that we are experiencing this pandemic in a very different way. Experiences of those privileged ones and marginalized ones are completely different, as other panelists has said. For example, so many women have lost their jobs. University students are deprived from the opportunities of interacting with their friends and lost their safe spaces, to name a few. But at the same time, we are sharing this difficulty all together. No matter how privileged you are, it's impossible to be completely irrelevant. In this sense, we are experiencing a collective grief, I could say. Looking at this pandemic from a very different perspective, we could take advantage of this togetherness, unity. We all feel vulnerable, and we all need a care as a way of surviving. Collective care in the time of collective grief as a strategy are needed. And in order to transform this collective grief into collective care system, the faith can play an important role. The approach that faith actors can take, that's what I learned from the works at the YWC of Japan, which is founded and based on the Christianity, is not to ignore the voices of those in difficulties, like be strong because everyone is having a tough time, but rather the act of holding a faith is to stay in solidarity with those in grief and being weak and believing in their voices. My experience on sisterhood with other young women proved that in the solidarity in the space, we call it safe space, we in faith can experience healing together, and we can reimagine hope and vision collectively, and which will be leading to creating resilient communities and even to the sustainability of the movement and activism. Yeah, that's all.
Wow, what's powerful words of message and call to action from all of our three panelists. We have a question and answers button, just to be mindful of our time also. I would apologize if some of the questions will not be addressed, but we will try our best to connect with you through the Worldwide WCA. But I really appreciate our panelists for this webinar, for those powerful and prophetic voices that you have shared, and the common themes that I've heard throughout this conversation really is of how faith is experienced in your different contexts and different realities, right? Maybe it's a faith with God and faith and sisterhood as we see each other as part of the human beings or human in this collective relationship that we have, and how important education is in addressing the fears and also twisting or justifying these oppressive systems through our faith. So really accurate information through combating fear by accurate information, as was what was shared, and the importance of solidarity. Solidarity in the experience we have as we heal each other and as we heal the world in a collective manner as well, and creating resilient societies and communities, especially during this time of COVID-19. And we recognize that around the world, women and young people are the ones really greatly impacted by this. Even before COVID, we are already the ones disadvantaged. But at the same time, and also more than ever in COVID-19, we have seen this, and we have seen a lot of resiliency also happening around the world. And your stories are examples of that. So thank you so much to all of you. Indeed, I resonate with one of the taglines of the World YWCA, that when young women lead, great things happen. I'm gonna say it again. I love this tagline. When young women lead, great things happen. Again, thank you so much for the World YWCA for organizing and initiating conversations like this to uplift and highlight the stories of women from the ground to this global platform. And again, I am honored to moderate this virtual panel, and really just to share as well that, you know, as a program executive of the youth engagement in the WCC, there is so much expectation that I will be the ones giving so much energy and encouragement to young people around the world. But as all of you has experienced, you know, I had my break point, and it's really hard, so much expectations, and also sometimes being undermined as a young woman. And all of this coming together, I had my break point that I couldn't do this anymore. And really, it is through sisterhood, the solidarity and shared experiences with one another that really helped me to get over them. And it's a process. We continue to have them, but I'm glad and I'm so blessed and inspired by all of you. And I hope this will also expand the network of sisterhood and fellowship of sisterhood with you all. Thank you again, and thank you for to the YWCA for having this in collaboration with the World Council of Churches in addressing issues that matter most to young women around the world. So thank you again, and with everyone else, I hope you're inspired and blessed by these stories. And we hope to see you again next time in another conversation hosted by the World YWCA. God bless you all.
Thank you.